What's been one measure in the last 12 months that has really upped travel agent sales for you? What has the airline done, Sri Lankan and Alitalia and Qatar and Air Canada, which has tremendously upped travel agent sales?
Okay, I mean, if you really look at the travel agency business, majority of us, it's a major channel. I would say 80% of our business comes from travel agents. Yeah. It's changing, but depending on the markets, in certain markets, it's changing. If I come up with my own experience, if it's in Singapore, 40% comes from the online channel. So it's
Singapore
changing.
is 40% online, yeah, it's market.
So it's changing. So it's from market to market, it changes. But if you look at the average, per se, in all the markets, Middle East, more towards travel agencies. So it changes. But of course, this particular mix is changing now.
Right. Okay. So what's the one thing that you have done that has tremendously helped travel agent sales?
Right. We had a kind of a different challenge. We had a war going on for about 30 years. And suddenly the market started opening up. We were more into ethnic markets because of lack of competition. We haven't had that many airlines coming into Sri Lanka during that period. All of a sudden it started opening up. We started getting competition. So then, will this ethnic traffic having one segment, is it going to be there as a survival factor? The answer was no. So we had to change. We had to look at segment in the market. One thing that we introduced in the market is educating the field, because field was used to something else. Now we need to get them to start segmenting the markets. We introduced something called the channel to segment map, basically to asking the field to identify the segments that they could get into. And these segments, we wanted them to then align a channel that would be utilizing. Because if you look at the segments in a broader perspective, if you take the cost-conscious leisure, they are not tilted towards the traditional channels. They are more into the online, the .coms, that kind of a thing. If you take the structured corporate traveler, they are more onto the travel agency side. So we wanted them to identify this differential. And then, once they identify the mix that they should have to get the best, to make the route profitable, job was easy. Because each agency had a particular peculiarity of selling which segments. Then from the eSmash, we used to look at the production and what was ours and what was theirs in totality. And then we used to go behind that.
So it really was about segmentation and making this data.
Exactly. So that was one good thing that we did, basically to change the mix on board.
Okay.
That was the idea behind that.
Very nice. I'm sure this is good insights for everyone as well. What about in Alitalia?
Yeah. First of all, we are facing as Alitalia a very huge transformation this year, starting from last year, because we changed the perspective, industrial perspective, basically, from our company. We left behind, I think, 2-3 years ago. We faced a very competitive and tough situation, especially for the Italian markets, and for the position, basically, that the home carrier, basically. Now we have a new industrial plan, very solid, very aggressive, with a new equity partner as Etihad. Etihad is contributing a lot to the new Alitalia, basically. So our main goal now is to reposition the company on the market, require let me say, the position of a market leader, especially in Italy. Italy is a very competitive, tough market because many top airlines or alliances have a very huge market share here. The low-cost carrier has increased a lot of market share. But we have to face this competition, the organization, and the industrial plan. In that case, we have now 3-4 years to recover the gap, basically. We have a very aggressive plan, very fast plan. Etihad actually is the fastest growing company, I think, in the world. So very professional. For us, it's a very good benchmark. We are acquiring a lot of benchmark or expertise, knowledge, basically. Nowadays, in Italy and in the international market, we are facing the reorganization. I'm talking about the sales and commercial organization. Actually, on average, we sell, on average, 70% of our revenues via travel agencies. On average, worldwide, 7-0. Okay. Yeah, worldwide, basically. Yeah. Of course, in some markets, we have a very huge penetration of direct sales, like in Italy, for example, like US. So in that case, we are reorganized all the sales organization, the commercial organization. We have already changed more than 50% of our salespersons. Wow. So we have introduced a new system to be on the market, like Salesforce automation for the Salesforce. We organize the Salesforce based on the market segmentation, basically. We have seen that we should be very segmented and targeted on the action. We are very focused on long goal, high-yield traffic, basically. Domestic is changing a lot. It's becoming like, let me say, a commodity, basically. Yep. Especially in the Italian market and the European market, where the low costs are very, very aggressive. So we are focused on the corporate segment and on high yield and long goal premium traffic, basically. So that's the main focus, basically.
Okay, so once again, segmentation comes up, and of course, we'll touch again on the Etihad partnership in a bit. Because what about Qatar Airways?
Yes, Qatar Airways, in fact, have been in a kind of a peculiar position with regards to the competition and the growth, because we have a different kind of a challenge. The challenge is not the receding market, but the challenge is the way we are growing.
Yeah.
So that growth presents a big challenge. It's not only for us, it's for all our partners in the region. Yeah. All of the partners are growing almost at a kind of equitable pace.
Did you say partners?
Yeah, of course, yes. We are all kind of industry partners. We all work for the common cause. It really doesn't matter, from that perspective when we're talking about in general. Yes, competitors for sure. But then overall, we are serving the market for their transportation needs, and that's what we are there for. From our perspective, what we have seen is the last year has been quite a kind of a roller coaster. Not because the industry was not growing. Industry has seen good amount of growth in a number of sectors with regards to the passengers. But yields have taken a turmoil because the economic situation in most of the pockets of the world have not been very encouraging. Yeah. So that kind of put a kind of a different kind of a pressure, wherein the passenger numbers were coming in, the yields were not coming in. And I think most of the region faces a similar issue right now. And in a situation like this, it's very important for us to kind of rethink, re-strategize, rejig our strategies as we go along. And what we did was, what we did differently in the last year was to reposition ourselves fairly quickly in different markets with regards to the market needs, rather than having a universal strategy to move around.
So give me an example. What was the positioning for a market previously, and what is it
taking
now?
a cue from what Ajit just said, that yes, in markets like Asia, wherein the internet penetration is very, very high. Yeah. So we did went after that kind of channel, wherein in some markets like Singapore, we also encourage people to book online because the internet penetration rate is quite high. Mm-hmm. For us, there are some other markets which were quite surprising, and the markets behaved in a way which were completely different from the way that we thought. There are a couple of markets in Asia wherein you will think that they are traditional markets, very much oriented with travel agencies. And we saw a very big internet penetration growth out of these markets, which was very encouraging. But then all in all, the agency channel is definitely very important for us as well. Based on market to market, anything between 70 to 75%, 80% comes in from that channel. So we work very closely with the partners cross-board. What we did differently in the last year was to basically align ourselves closely to the trade. So we were working very, very closely with the trade. The trade portal that we launched last year did help because it helped in communicating better with our trade partners. So that helped.
So what does the trade portal do? Does it have deals and incentives?
It does talk to the individuals kind of on one-to-one basis. It gives us an ability to talk to our partners on one-to-one basis. So that's where it really helped us in focusing ourselves to the needs of the market and helped overall growth of the company.
So this is interesting. So the new aspect we learned here was building relationships.
That's right.
Through this portal with the travel agents, right?
Yep.
What about Air Canada?
Okay, first I'd like to preface my comments with just one view, a different view from the topic of the conversation, which is declining agent loyalty. And at least from an Air Canada perspective, that's not the experience we had in the past couple of years or so. In fact, I think I could say that our market share has been growing over and above our
So
capacity
increasing
share.
agent loyalty.
We're increasing market share, which I think, in a sense, is a gauge of loyalty. That might be because we are an airline that is growing very quickly, and that brings us a little bit more critical mass, and we become more relevant to these agencies in many parts of the world. But I would say that rather than less loyalty, what I think is happening, and especially from a home market perspective, in our case, Canada, is that agencies are becoming a lot more sophisticated in terms of how they manage their incentive programs. So where I think whereas before they would pretty much sell as much as they could on the home carrier, for example, and hope for the best, and pretty much figure out how much they're going to make at the end of the month or the end of the quarter. What's happening now is that they will, for example, by choice, have Air Canada and our joint venture, et cetera, as their first choice, but they will sell us to the point that they max out on the program, not one ticket more, and then they go to the second and the third. So that's a level of sophistication, which means that they're basically following exactly what they should be doing on their incentive program. So it's upon us to design the right program to drive loyalty beyond that level.
So this leads to an interesting next topic, which is how do you go beyond incentives? Because any airline can throw in a larger amount of incentive, and then you're right, the travel agency will sell as much as possible for that airline before coming to you. So how do you go beyond incentives? Is that something that you've tried?
So now answering your question in terms of what we've done differently last year, I think we've had a complete change of mind at Air Canada and position in the market. I think, like many airlines, for a long time we thought, travel agents as a necessary evil or a channel that you try not to grow and you focus on your direct, but you deal with them as much as you have to. I think there was a big change in our mindset. We see travel agents clearly as one channel that is there to stay and a channel that should grow. We completely changed our leadership in sales. There's not one director in sales today that have been there for more than a year. And we changed the way we work with them. We really reset the partnership with the trade in Canada in all various ways. I mean, now, before you talk to several different people at Air Canada, depending on the product, Air Canada Vacations, product distribution, etc., they would have a lot of people to talk to, and we would deal with them. Now they really have one account manager for each agency, and that single point of contact is responsible for developing that business. Every single travel agency has a business plan that is discussed with them at the beginning of the year, and we really, with the ones that we work, and there are very few that we work directly, we really have a working relationship where we try to develop the business together. So it's a very different relationship than just, I'll pay you this much, you sell so many tickets.
Right, this is very interesting. So what I'm learning is, instead of saying you are the necessary evil and you're on top of .com and direct, you've started embracing these travel agencies, and not only that, you've got point person, so they don't have to shuffle around, right?
Yeah.
That's actually quite interesting. I used to live in Singapore, and the one big famous thing about Singapore was, if you call any government office in Singapore, I call in the health department and I say, you know what, I'm looking for a university degree. Nothing to do with health, right? In the government, they will never say, sorry, I do not have the answer, go look for someone else. They will say, let me transfer you. You will never say no, and you will always reach that single point of contact, and that ups the rating, and that's government, right? And I see the same thing happening when there's one point person, as opposed to bouncing around, it drives and improves the relationship. That surely should cost beyond incentives, I guess. What about your side, Vikas?
I think it is quite similar to the story that Air Canada has, because what we have done is rather than focusing on one particular channel, we are looking at the right pockets in the right areas. So if agencies are there and they have to be worked upon, we are very closely working with them. Not only working with them, as I was mentioning, we are trying to have those relationships going with them so that we work as a partner rather than just a supplier and a kind of a facilitator from our perspective. So these relationships do help in the long stead, because yes, there is that fair market share issue that you have within most of the markets, where you should be getting a particular share from a particular travel agencies. But as I said, that we are in a very unique position wherein we are growing at a pace which is much faster than the industry. So knowing that pace, understanding that volume that has to be shifted in that perspective, the dimension of relationship changes with each travel agent, so as to say. So incentives, yes, they are important. Incentives alone cannot work. There is a combination of incentives, the right pricing, the right strategy, the right relationship. As a mixture, it definitely fruits into a fruitful relationship on both sides.
And like Virgilio said, do you also have a small group of big agencies that you work with very closely, and the rest?
We actually leave that to the local individual markets to strategize, because we don't do a mandate, and that's what we have avoided doing, especially for the last year, wherein we can lay out a global strategy and say, focus on one particular channel and don't focus on the other one. We've left it to the individual managers to decide what is the best way of operating in a particular market, and we support them in their initiatives. And that's what has actually helped us, because we are then very close to the market.
Right. So it's a bit more of a decentralized
That's right.
system.
Approach.
Okay. What about Alitalia, beyond incentives?
Yeah, quite similar, especially to what you say, Virgilio from Air Canada. Actually, we changed the approach towards the distribution. Of course, we have to talk about differently from the home market and Europe and Americas or Far East, basically. But in general, we have to say that we changed the approach from simple sales relationship to the partnership relationship. That's because, especially in Europe, we see a concentration of revenues on more or less, on average, we can say 40% of the revenues comes from the first 15, 12 accounts, basically. So I'm talking about the travel management companies, basically, because Alitalia especially has 80% of our traffic is motivation business travel, basically. Right. So we are very focused on travel management companies and chains of travel agencies. And we have to face one challenge, is that we call it the retaliation, that Virgilio said before. Retaliation means for us, okay, I try to, as a retailers, to maximize that contracts, basically, and then I shift to another carriers, basically. So it will be very important to calibrate, to set the trade policies, so let me say the incentive scheme. Nowadays we are focused only on long haul and high yield, basically, to support a new positioning and new routes, new capacity on the market that we put starting from last year. So the incentive schemes are basically set by the based on a capacity on the market, destinations, and based on a market share analysis for each account, and to try to catch the right traffic for Italia in different markets, basically, to avoid the retaliation phenomenon. We also approach the market to identify one key account manager for one account. Okay. So just to have
So in that one-to-one relationship. that
one-to-one
comes-
relationship, we have one territory, one face, one sales, basically. That's only because these 15, 12 accounts that I said before are very complex. So that's why we have to manage with them marketing activities, sales activities, analysis, distribution items. So basically, this is the main focus that we have actually.
Ajit, what about your side, beyond incentives?
Okay, I mean, if you look at incentives, there are front-end incentives, there are back-end incentives. Incentives have become part of the travel agency business. I mean, it's common to every airline. More you give, more you get, that kind of a thing. But apart from the incentives, incentives alone would not bring business. As like Vikas said, the relationship matters. If you take Asia, it's more relationship marketing on that side. And remember the segment channel map I was talking to you about? See, you take UK. If you segment it right, there are even marine agents, there are student agents. You need to maintain that relationship to get that business across to us. You have the data, you have the seasonalities, and it all depends on how important that particular segment at that particular time. So it's getting that mix. So what we used to do was, if that particular segment is important for us, we used to look at their production. We look to see the industry ranking of those agents, those are clustered onto that particular segment, and then try and get our ranking in line with that industry ranking. That was the push we used to tell the field. Maintain your relationships and try and align your ranking to the industry ranking or try and surpass, because that's something that would pull you in that particular segment. Of course, to get that, there are a whole heap of other things that comes along with it. Incentives were part of it, unfortunately or fortunately.
Okay. And I know Sri Lanka has recently joined One World. It's been about a year, just over a year?
On the 1st of May 2014, we
Right.
joined the
Coming-
One World.
Okay, almost coming to 2 years then.
Exactly.
How has that impacted, especially the agency side of business?
See, if you look at the One World and our association with One World,
Yeah.
we are a carrier in the subcontinent, so we fill that gap for the One World partner airlines. And instantly we were getting almost about 1,000 destinations to sell, 660 lounges for our consumers, and a product to sell along with the partners. So bringing that product in itself would not bring us any business. It has to be communicated. It has to be utilized by our consumers, and it has to be used by our intermediaries to communicate that to the final consumer. So we had kind of two approaches to the whole thing. Before we started joining the One World, we knew on such and such a day we are going to get into this. We had a kind of an internal program to educate our own people, because the internal campaign was important along with an external campaign. So internal stakeholders were first given an overview of what we are going to get and how the product is going to get expanded, the opportunities what we are going to get. And then in that particular program, our country managers, our sales managers were also part of it. Then in turn, when they went back to their respective stations, they were conducting seminars, kind of interactions with the agents to communicate the whole thing back to the intermediaries. So that's how we started the whole ball rolling, and it has helped us. I mean, if you really look at between Qatar and Sri Lanka, if you look at that sector, we work perfectly well. Yeah. And documents are interchangeable, and both parties are benefited immensely with the One World partnership.
Okay, so it was a lot of pre-planning and education
Exactly.
in the markets that has really helped.
Definitely.
Okay. What about the Etihad partnership with Alitalia? That's another new partnership which is having significant impact. How has that changed stuff internally at Alitalia?
Yeah, we are facing this, integration with the Etihad in terms of industrial plane, because I think nowadays this is one of the most exciting projects where to work with in the airlines industries, because actually we have three main focus points. One is the new one, so the new equity partner, Etihad. This is crucial for the relaunch of Alitalia, basically. So they're investing a lot, and in a very mature market, very competitive market as Italy and Europe, basically. And we are still performing very well. We reorganize all the organization. We starting to regain market share from the markets.
So what was done differently to regain this market share?
So now we have basically product, so services, I mean. We opened the Abu Dhabi hub. Basically, it is very important from the Europe perspective, because we have a competitive product via Abu Dhabi versus Dubai or Doha, basically. There is very huge traffic, basically. One of the first ONDs from Italy, now it's changing during the last 10 years. Nowadays, one of the most important ONDs is ONDs in the Far East, basically. So China, Australia, or Japan.
Where you don't even fly.
Yeah, exactly.
Metal.
So the partnership with Etihad is crucially strategic because it opens these new opportunities. We are even reorganizing the activities. We are import some best practices from them, and we can cover more markets now. For example, some markets where Alitalia were offline, basically. Now we have a presence, commercial presence. We have product, services, co-share. So we increase the network product dramatically, basically, in just 1 year. In the same time, we manage a very strong partnership with the Delta Airlines on the North Atlantic routes that remains.
Joint venture, right?
It's a joint venture.
Right.
Yeah, it's a joint venture. It's a joint venture, and of course, a commercial partnership, basically. So this is crucial. This is very important for us because North America remains one of the most high-yield revenue traffic from Italy. Of course, Delta guarantee has a very huge coverage of North Atlantic, the North American market, basically, US, Canada, Mexico. And we are historically quite strong on South America as Alitalia. And then we have the joint venture with Air France and KLM in Europe, in the European markets. Joint venture and commercial partnership, basically. So that's why we go to the market together with Air France, Delta, and the KLM with the same contracts, with the same key account manager so it will be one face that represents all the joint companies in Italy and Europe. So in Italy, we are the market leader, so we represent basically the joint venture. In US, it's Delta that represents us. So many synergies. So from North Atlantic, Delta, Europe with Air France, KLM, and of course the new equity partners that is Etihad with the new opportunities, and especially Australia, Far East, and Africa, of course. Then we have also other important partners like Air Berlin in Germany, basically. So Etihad has been crucial for us: product, services, best practices, investments, basically.
I believe Alitalia flight attendants are now being trained in Abu Dhabi by Etihad, is that right?
Sorry, can you repeat?
Are Alitalia flight attendants also being trained in Abu Dhabi?
Yeah.
Right? So it really ups the service and the whole.
Yeah, of course.
You've got better stuff to sell. Right. Okay, very interesting to see the balance between SkyTeam on one side and the whole Etihad partnership on the other. Right. Vikas, you've of course, joined One World as well. Has your experience been different from Sri Lankan? I think you both joined around the same time.
Yes, we joined in October 2013. So that's
Right.
that's when we joined One World. One World was quite a good fit for a career like us because One World is a very different kind of an alliance. It is a very corporate-related alliance because if you look at the ASKs of One World flies to primarily to all business destinations, and as a group, we are the market leaders in those business destinations. So that kind of fits in very well with our corporate strategy as well, because we are also a very corporate-focused airline. So that really helped with the synergies there. It did give us a good footprint in the markets where we needed that, because ourselves, we are expanding at a very fast pace. But then, we cannot be flying everywhere on ourselves. So this is where the partnership really helped. Being in One World, as Jeep mentioned, we have access to these 1,000+ destinations that we can take our passengers to. So that just increases the portfolio for the partners to sell us, right? So whether it is trade partners or even the individual traveler, he has the ability to get that transfer via the Doha hub. So taking passengers out of Asia into US and vice versa is becoming a lot more easier. And the combinations for the travelers have increased tremendously. So whether they're flying over Europe and then coming on to the Middle East and then going on to Australia, or coming in from Asia and then going into US, the opportunities are more and the choices are more. So that has actually opened up that portfolio for us, which overall helped us in our overarching growth strategy.
Okay, so it's been a good overall positive
Absolutely,
thing,
yes.
right? And visually, of course, Air Canada is growing at such a fast pace. You've got new destinations like Brisbane and Delhi and Dubai. Some of these are travel agent-heavy markets. Dubai, potentially Delhi even. Is Air Canada doing things differently for these new markets?
Well, yeah, those three markets, for example, are very different markets per se. Delhi is a very heavy travel agent market.
Right.
It's more of it's primarily a VFR market. It's
Right.
so very, very much reliant on travel agents. Dubai, not so much, not as much as you would expect. It's actually a market that has a very big corporate component, and there's a retail component. So even from a .com perspective, or Canada.com perspective, it's a market that has responded very well from a retail perspective, which is not something we expected from the beginning. We thought it was going to be a much more of a consolidation, specialty travel agency market. Yeah, very, very different. Brisbane, again, another market that has a big corporate component.
Right. So, and I'm guessing markets like Delhi, because it's VFR, it's seasonal.
Yeah,
right?
very much so.
Do you work differently with the travel agents for the off-season to try and incentivize them to fill the plane up from that end?
Yeah, it's not only seasonal, but it's a market with a huge directional imbalance, right?
Right.
So at some times of the year, as you know, nobody wants to go to India, and sometimes of the year, certainly nobody wants to go to Canada. but we do work with both sides, and we try to ensure that we have support year-round.
Right, and we were chatting earlier, Emirates has a non-stop Toronto-Dubai as well, and that too on an
Correct.
A380, and you've got the 78 flying to Dubai.
Correct.
How have you dealt with that? Corporate traffic, who's winning there?
Well, I think we have, I think we cater to very different market niches. I think their market is primarily a VFR market and large volume market beyond Dubai. Our focus is the corporate market, the local corporate market to Dubai.
OND?
Yeah. Oh yeah, we don't really have anything beyond Dubai.
Right. Do you have any code shares beyond Dubai? Or
No.
Okay,
not
so
yet.
it's really OND.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. Interesting. So let me open it up to the floor now. I know we've all been listening, and some very interesting insights being shared. To encourage participation, I've got some giveaways here. There you go. It's post-lunch. I've got a book coming out on airline marketing, and I've got 3 copies, if you drop a line, to everyone who asks a question. Actually, 4 copies. Okay? So who's the first copy going to? Oh, that's close enough to Delta, I guess. There you go.
This is good incentive in right. Yes, just to Silvio and to Vikas. We know that Qatar, you're now in one world, and you're spreading within that alliance. We know that indeed Etihad is now a good financial partner for Alitalia. How could you explain the differences in the last 10 years with those Middle East carriers, so Qatar, Etihad here in this case, versus Emirates and Oman Air or people like that, versus the approach they had 10 years ago with alliances, and how they are moving now within those alliances. So now you're in one world, so that's fine. And what about Etihad in the 5-10 years from now? Are they going to have that vision of being into one alliance?
10 years is a long time. I think there was no Etihad 10 years ago, too.
Yeah, is it 10 years ago or 10 years in future?
Years ago,
Yeah.
all these Middle East carriers didn't want to hear anything about alliances.
Right.
So you kept growing
Sure,
on your own,
sure, yeah.
which is great.
Right.
And now you're kind of rethinking the way of doing business with new partners that are now on the JVs.
Right. No, well, if I can kind of speak on behalf of Qatar Airways. From our perspective, it's a part of our growth strategy. 10 years back, I've been with QR for the last 10 years, so I can say 10 years back what were we looking at. We were expanding at that point in time, and that point in time, the expansion was quite definitive because we needed that momentum to come in. We needed that mass to be gathered before we can look at the partnerships. So about 5 years back in history, we looked at that where have we reached in those last 10 to 5 years time frame, and we reached a critical mass, and we said that from here on, yes, the growth will be to an extent that even today, if you look at it year on year, most of our kind of friends in the region, we are all growing at a rate of about 20-25%, but this was about 40-45% at that point in time. So this growth, in this growth kind of phenomena, we looked at that how can we now inorganically increase this growth and reach to wider places. Because for us, serving customers alone was not the kind of end solution. Because yes, we can take passengers, and I would reiterate what I just said a few minutes back. We could take passengers from point A to B, but if the need of the passenger is to go to point C, we have to offer him a solution. And this is where One World as an alliance came in very handy, because the way One World is structured, it does not create an impediment on your growth. You can grow as much as you want to, and alongside, you work with your partners. So that fits very well with the overall growth strategy, and that for moving for next 5 years, I see it continuing like that. Beyond that, I won't be able to comment, because 5 years in aviation is a very long time.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with the colleague concerning my point of view, of course, not the point of view of the company, because this is a very good question, basically. I think in 10 years, just changed the market, basically, just changed the competitive landscape, basically. I personally think that in the future, Gulf Carrier and Alliance will find a new competitive collaboration scheme on the market, basically. But by the hand is the market that set the new organization. Alliance, partnership, ventures just reflect what the market needs, basically, what are the opportunities or the threats of the market, basically. So I think that the future will face the new collaboration inside the alliance or joint ventures or commercial partnership that reflects the opportunities and the threats of the single airlines, basically.
Hope that answered. Yes, we got one more question. There you go. That's the second book. 2 more to go.
Yeah, this is Heiko from Lufthansa. You all emphasized the high significance of revenues generated throughout travel agents. How would you rate Lufthansa's strategy in introducing the DCC, the distribution cost charge, in the light of declining agent loyalty?
It's a very interesting question. Let me just try and attempt it from my side. I'll leave that floor to the colleagues then. From our perspective, yes, it's a brave move. It's a brave move, and we've been watching it closely, not only on that aspect, but we look at certainly the developments that have happened over the last few years with regards to the distribution landscape. Now, the way distribution landscape is going to change and evolve over the next few years is we are almost on the threshold, as we see it, on a kind of a complete rejig of the distribution landscape, with the IATA NDC coming in more and more into picture. So how it will shape up in future, it could be anyone's guess, but then I think as an industry, we had a lot to catch up with regards to the way we speak to our customers, the way we interact with our customers. Now, where these customers are coming from, whether they're coming from a traditional GDS mechanism or they're coming directly to us, at this point in time, we really have to now think about, yes, the cost of these passengers coming onto us, which is what you have focused on. And we have been watching it very closely, very interesting development. But from our perspective at this stage, we don't foresee to react on it in the very immediate future. But yes, this immediate future could be a year, could be 6 months. It can be kind of something that we can relook at it as the market develops. But we are just, as of now, watching.
I would say from our perspective, we applaud the initiative, and you were very brave to do that on your own. Of course, there has to be a number of conditions, and some stars needs to be aligned, and some contracts that need to be aligned for you to be able to do that. But I think the most important piece of what Lufthansa did is it really brought to light that aspect of the distribution cost that the public in general does not understand. It is a cost burden that is completely disproportionate to the technology that is out there for the GDSs today, and it's not justifiable that the cost is as high as it is. And we don't seem to get, outside the airlines and a very limited discussion group, we don't seem to get much attention overall on that. I mean, if you look at GDSs today and how they operate, it's a very bizarre setup. I mean, I think it's one of the very few services. It's the only service that I know that you actually pay your users to use it, and that's how you maintain your market share forever. And it's something that the authorities and the governments don't really seem to look at that, but it's a cost burden at the end of the day to the passenger. And I think the merit of what Lufthansa did, it brings that to light. Hopefully for the consumer in general, one day they will realize that they're paying a very big cost for an electronic transaction that really doesn't cost that much.
Hi, Richard from Brussels Airlines. We are from the brave ones of the Lufthansa group. We have talked a lot about Uber, about Amazon, and we haven't talked at all about Google Flights. How do you see the impact of Google Flights in the industry from here to 5 years?
Well, let me Google that.
Good question. Yeah, Google that.
Yeah, let me just do some research.
So it's again a development which has been now coming in for last 2-3 years, not happening today. It's in the works for last 2-3 years, and the way it is shaping up, yes, very much in line with the way customers and consumers are looking at changing the way they are picking up the travel today. This is a catalyst to that change. Google has become kind of part of our everyday lives. All of us do tend to kind of visit the Google temple once a day, so at least maybe more frequently than that. Now, looking at that, this is a kind of a logical step from an innovation company like Google. How it will impact the airline industry in general, we see it as a positive development. Ultimately, as I was mentioning, the distribution landscape is going to change. That's what I personally believe in the next 5 to 10 years. When the distribution landscape is changing, within that changed landscape, definitely Google Flight Search will be a kind of a very important partner to play with. Even today, they are getting the significance in terms of they're working together with the different airlines to come up with a robust product. Still in the shape, I will still take another 2 to 3 years before they actually optimize this product very well. But once it is optimized, by that time, we will have development of which is happening very quickly on the NDC front in terms of the personalization, which will also come up. So at that point in time, the distribution from our perspective will be completely in a different light. So we will have the reliance that we have on the GDSs today. We personally believe that GDSs are here to stay. All that they have to do is they have to evolve their business model. They have to look at how can they partner with airlines, how they can partner with the industry in general to actually shape up in the new distribution landscape. Once that stability is reached, then we will see who is getting what kind of share at that point in time. But then till that point in time, from our perspective, we see it as a very much in the stabilized or kind of in a shuffling mode, where in 1 year you will see a GFS going up in the trend. Second year you will see a customized solution from likes of alternative GDSs like FareLogics or DataLex. There are a whole lot of products that are coming into the market, which will kind of balance itself over the next 5 to 10 years. That's how I see it.
Yeah, I would just comment further. I think it's a positive development, and as with everything else that Google does, they will do it very well and they will innovate. I would say, and that's my personal opinion, not necessarily Air Canada's. I think we just have to hope that there will still be kayaks and sky scanners, et cetera, that still flourish. That Google doesn't become the single source for everything, everywhere, all the time, including airlines.
I think that just to add my 2 cents on this, the trend we see is towards transparency. Google is just playing into that on, hey, I'm just searching for a destination. By the way, here are flights to that place, right? So they're just trying to anticipate and offer even before you search proactively, right? But I think there's a second play. So Google can, get some market share or start getting some bookings, and it may or may not work well with the airlines. But I think there's a secret weapon that airlines have that Google or an OTA can seldom have, which is customer data. If you really look at Lufthansa's move, yes, it's a move to potentially reduce costs, but that's a short-term thing. But the increased number of people booking directly from Lufthansa.com and sharing all of their personal information with Lufthansa rather than the travel agent, that's a gold mine, especially in long term, because after 5 years, you've got so much data on that one customer, you can really personalize. Like you were saying earlier, you can personalize the services in a way a Google or a Skyscanner or a Kayak can never do, because you know the customer much better than all these OTAs can. So there's a second order of play, which airlines have the upper hand on, which someone like Google or Kayak can only aim to catch up. So that's a space to watch. More questions? We got 2 more. 1 more. 1 more book to give away.
It's right behind you.
Oh, right there. Okay. There you go. That's fine.
My question is regarding an industry initiative that was launched by IATA a few years back. Is NDC. Here we talk about distribution, we talk about agent loyalty. How do you see NDC stepping into this world? You see this very close, you see it long term. Is it something that will change the parameters we work with today? What's your perception in that front?
See, NDC to me is a catching up that we do as an airline industry. Let's look at what we have with close-knit industries like hotel industry. Now, to me, we all book hotels, right? When we book a hotel, does a hotel tell you that you have to book in, if you book in A, RBD, I'll charge you this much, or book in B, RBD, I'll charge you this much? It never happens like that. It's a spot price for that point in time when you're asking for that availability of a hotel. Now, airlines have overcomplicated their business models. That's how I see it as. And NDC is nothing but an initiative by IATA to simplify the business that we are trying to achieve. So it's also an ability that we already are in the retail space, like Amazon or anywhere else. Though we don't touch and see or touch and feel the product, but we see at least visually a product that we are basically buying. Today, we are getting distributed through the GDSs, which is a traditional channel, through price, availability. That's it, right? That's what we are seeing as an airline number, and then a price and an availability. There is no distinguishing factor which is coming up. As for all carriers, it's a wonderful opportunity because it gives us that opportunity to showcase our product to the customer before he makes that conscious choice to buy it. NDC is nothing but standardizing that across the industry for us to show our product to the consumer. I would quote, in fact, the CEO of Fairlogics. I attended one of his presentations. He said it is actually, if we see it logically, it's nothing but actually building up a HD pipe. Today we are living in the age of analog televisions, right? So we see that black and white image. It's just changing it to a high definition. That's what NDC is to bring about. Now, a lot of times, we have seen it that, it's going to kill the GDSs, airlines are going to go direct. We don't see it in that perspective. We are, in fact, one of the airlines that are actually doing a trial with Amadeus. So for that, because we see the real utility of the NDC, and the real utility is actually to give out that information transparency to the customer, to actually personalize, understand that customer before he comes to us, so that we can cater to his needs better. Because customer is actually the king, and we have to realize that. So that's what is happening with NDC, and that's what my personal viewpoint is.
If you really look at the travel agency product that we see today, and compare that with what .com offers, or an OTA offers. We basically offer a bundled product. It could be a car rental. It could be my own services exhibiting there. And are these travel agents in a position to do this? The answer is no. The NDC is bringing all these aspects into one and trying to be in line with the .coms, where they would be able to give a one price, a bundled product, and an opportunity for all the airlines to get their information, the products that they offer. It could be the insurance, the car rentals. So that's what NDC is all about. They're moving forward because they have understood the traditional channel is not going to take them anywhere, because the .coms, the OTAs are coming up. You look at the millenniums or Gen Ys. If you look at in China, the 56% of the leisure market is with this Gen Y. They are changing the way they do business, and they do their research. They do everything before they even walk into a stimulus I have or Vikas have for Qatar Airways or Sri Lankan. They are armed with the competition. They are armed with the product information. When they walked in, it's different. So we need to pull that travel agency channel to face the challenges of tomorrow. That's what this is all about.
Yeah, if I can just comment further on that. I mean, and it's interesting because we hear from travel agents very often some big concerns around NDC. But it's obviously not an initiative that is designed around getting rid of travel agents or anything like that. It's just a better shelf. That's all it is. I mean, but if your business model is completely based on intransparency and what is there today, selling a commodity and getting a GDS kickback, yeah, there might be a little bit of a concern, but it's a matter of evolving. At the end of the day, it's a better shelf, it's a better display. It's the capability of customizing that product to a specific consumer.
Yeah, but that's the point. You're entering into business which is owned today by travel agents like rent-a-car, hotels, insurances. That's where they see the threat.
Yeah.
It's an obvious threat.
Or an opportunity if you evolve with it. Yeah.
Of course.
The analogy I had for NDC was you're going from a Walmart shelf to a Tiffany's display. where it's the same thing, but it's on a very nice shelf and you will pay more for it just because it's visible and it's nicely displayed for you, personalized.
Another question about NDC. Do you see it coming sooner than later? There's a lot of talks every time, we go into airline forums and everything, everybody's talking about NDC, but nobody is really capable of saying when is it going to be live,
Where I see challenge for NDC is that as airlines, we have done, all of us together have done a lot of work on NDC. Where the gap today exists, and this we have even voiced in different forums, is that the consumers don't understand yet what is NDC. And this is where I think the collective effort for the next few years have to be channelized too, wherein we have to educate the consumers and the delivery partners, which is even the travel agency community. Now, I agree with you, the travel agencies show a lot of apprehension just because of the fact that they are not even aware of what is happening on that front. So that education over the next few years will help fast track the NDC initiative, because from the technology side, things are developing at a pretty fast pace. There are new partners coming up, there are new developers that are coming up, which will eventually become aggregators in the long run. So that's all good. Technology-wise, I think we are getting there. IATA, from the NDC schema point, they are developing very fast. We are testing the schema. We are already, I think, on version 3 right now, so which is absolutely fine. That progress is fine. I think where we are lacking is to actually educate the end user as well as the delivery partners in there. Once we achieve that, I think we can fast track the progress. Otherwise, it will take a longer time.
Any last question? I actually have a real book to give away as well. It's called When Millennials Take Over. It's an autographed copy, not my autograph. But one last question. It's a real book on millennials. I think they needed more incentive than this. Yes, right at the back there. Thank you.
Traditional, the way of thinking of the airlines was to cost reductions in distribution channels like the travel agencies. One of those steps was to go into the web sales. Are you squeezing all the data that you are getting through the web sales in order to improve your sales?
If we're utilizing the web data?
Squeezing, absolutely. Or you are taking advantage only of 50% of the data that you're getting through the web sales?
No, we're not there yet in terms of having a full functional CRM tool to really look at every opportunity. That's something that is very high in our priority list to develop that. But I would say that's one focus. But I would say, at least from an Air Canada perspective, our focus is not to necessarily move sales from the travel agency community or that channel specifically to aircanada.com. I think there's room for both. When you look at travel agency sales, normally they actually are, in many cases, higher yielding sales than they are from .com. Different itineraries, more complex itineraries. You see much less of that on .com that you see on travel agencies. What we have been doing, back to your point about cost, is to really have that discussion with travel agencies. Rather than looking at how much their revenue production is, today more and more the discussion we're having is about margin. So you may be a $200 million travel agency for us, very low margin, not that interested, not that strategic for us. You may be a $50 million a travel agency with a much higher margin, with higher yields, and the right economics in terms of distribution. You may be on our API rather than a GDS, et cetera, et cetera. We're much more interested in working and developing your business. So it's becoming much more of a margin discussion, and if the margin is similar or better from a travel agency that it is at aircanada.com, yes, we're very interested in working with you.
Yeah, actually, may I add something? Yeah, absolutely agree with Virgilio. Even for us, we have seen that it's not a question of a shift of channel, because in terms of the margin, sometimes in some countries, it's more or less the same. But for example, from Alitalia side, the average ticket price that we sell via travel agencies is a double that compared with another average ticket price from Alitalia.com or OTAs, basically. We sell more complex itineraries, high-yield revenues, or via travel agencies. We sell basically, let me say, domestic flights, very simple, from our aidsdata.com. So even for us, the new approach is where there is margin, where there is potential, we are going to invest. At the same time, we are also investing a lot of money on CRM and one-to-one marketing, not only for end consumer, even for B2B. I'm talking about corporates, basically. We would like even to use the sales channel, the direct sales channel, in particular at Zelle.com, to improve our positioning on the corporate sales, basically. Because especially in Italy or in other markets, we are facing the OTA's position that is very strong, at least in Italy and Europe, and self-booking tools. So we have to reapproach this kind of sales channel, let me say. But in general, we can say that the main item is now the channel shift, because nowadays the cost of sales are more or less the same, let me say. But what is the margin, what is the potential, and the use of data, basically.
Interesting. Thank you. Any final questions? I have no more books to give away, so this will be genuine. If not, why don't we go around the panel, just down for everyone now. What do you see as the biggest opportunity in the next 12 months and this year in the travel agency business? Maybe, Ajit, we can start with you.
Biggest opportunity.
Yeah.
Interesting question. See, it all depends on the markets that we are in. In certain markets, the travel agency channel is more important than the direct channel. See, I don't think we have, we as an airline or we as an airline community is in a position to underestimate the travel agency channel, because in certain markets, our dependency factor is quite sizable. So we need to keep serving those markets, whether we like it or not. Channel shift, in certain segments it can happen, it cannot on certain particular segments like complex itineraries, corporate business. But at the same time, see, when low-cost carriers walked in, we legacy carriers thought we are going to be finished tomorrow. But it never happened. We survived and we started growing and we started expanding ourselves. So it's the same thing. What these .coms are doing is expanding the market. It would not be a threat to the travel agency business. That's what I see. Markets would start growing. It may not be one particular segment like corporate travel, but it could be the cost-conscious leisure, weekend gateways. Things like those segments would keep growing with the .com invasion. That's what I see.
Growing the market growth is coming.
Exactly.
Okay.
Opportunity.
Yes, the biggest opportunity.
Yeah, for us, maybe this year will be for sure with the travel agencies, knowledge of product and training, basically. That's because we, as I said before, we are repositioning our companies. We are rebranding all the company. And we have a new, completely changed network, basically. So it's a crucial challenge for us to communicate, to train it, our sales force and the travel agencies to better understand our position, new products, new services, and new network, basically. And the other one is a service for the travel agencies, especially for the top producer, top retailers. We have seen that this is a crucial point for us. It's a sales point for us, right. Because the service pre and post-flight, it's important for, especially for travel management companies that are managing travel for executives or managers. So they need to speed up process to have the right answer, the right support. So the challenge and the opportunity for us with the travel agents will be there. Right. Yeah.
Interesting. I see you at a similar point where Qatar and Sri Lankan were 2 years ago when they were one world, the education, the service, and the network growth. Vikas, what about yourself?
From our perspective, the biggest opportunity for this year is differentiation with regards to, and that is for the trade partners to happen. So we, from our perspective, I agree with Air Canada's kind of approach in here, is that the way you work with us. So travel agencies are here to stay, and this is what is becoming evident and more evident as we go along. We're not going to kill them. So that's also becoming very evident. We're not saying that, shift everything on .com. We don't want to do everything on our own. They are extensions, and I kind of completely agree with you with your presentation as well, that they definitely can be used as extensions. And this is where, we will continue to focus on and use them as our extensions rather than as a competitor for the same business.
Okay. So they're your arms and...
That's right.
Increasing your length.
Yeah.
Okay. I call it the octopus model. You're not a human with 2 hands. You're an octopus with 8 tentacles.
Absolutely.
Okay. Virgilio.
Well, for us, I would say the low-hanging fruit going forward is to further solidify our single point of contact type of approach and business development, which goes along with what we were talking about, margin, etc. So when we put in place last year, it's only been about a year that we have a person responsible for business development with each one of these these agencies. The idea is exactly that. It's not only look at how can I generate more revenue, but how can I improve margin. So look at how you're bringing the business to me from, is it via GDS, or which one, etc. The cost of your incentives, how you represent our product, is your travel agency counselor well-trained on their kind of the product, on their kind of the fair families, etc. If you have a storefront, do you have, are you visually supporting Air Canada, things like that. So and looking at either on the revenue and the quality of revenue, or on the cost side, and looking at ways to improve margin. So it's doing more of that.
Very nice. That's a very good point. So let me sort of summarize the session as we've seen. We started talking about personalization and segmentation from both Sri Lankan and Vikas from Qatar. We talked about single point of contact from Virgilio. We talked about leveraging partnerships that Alitalia is doing with Etihad and really growing the business that way. Abu Dhabi as point of East, and growing the Far East and Australia business, to even One World, how it's impacting both Sri Lankan as well as Qatar Airways. We also learned about, it's horses for courses. Different markets you've got to have different tactics. Like in Delhi, in Air Canada's case, you've got to deal with travel agents, and how Dubai was unexpectedly heavy on .com. Right, so it's really horses for courses. But then I think the discussion took an interesting turn, both with NDC and data coming in, and how data plays a big role. And I do believe that is the future. I found that, Qatar Airways, you mentioned the direct portal that you have for travel agents. I thought that's quite interesting because it not only helps you build a direct relationship, it gives you a lot of data that you can then mine, from market share to segmentation to cost of incentives. And interestingly, this all ties back to what I was talking about earlier in the day. What if there's an app for travel agents where you can engage with them directly, you can provide them service, and you can use all of this data to grow the business. Thank you very much for the participation and all the insights. Let's thank the panel, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.